hear me? Okay, so I'm talking close enough to it. And contrary to popular belief, Danielle, I've been doing this for 28 years and it still makes me a nervous wreck to come up here and talk to people. So if I talk too fast, raise your hand and say breathe. If I talk too slow, be glad because it means you can understand me. And if I start sounding like all of the adults in Charlie Brown, go ahead and go get something to eat. Anyway, so now we may as well go ahead and kick this off. Everybody asks, who am I? Right? So, of course, we have to cue the obligatory Princess Bride. Good job. AV. Try it again. Way to go. Ruins the AV.
No one of course best.
Absolutely. I am, by my team moniker, they call me the Sec Princess. Right? I will actually be at DEF CON, and that's on my t-shirt as one of the goons. I've been around doing this for longer than, from what I can see out here, many of you have been alive. Right? Which just, I know that dates me, but I mean, good Lord. Do we have any program managers out here? Oh, amazing. I cannot believe that we don't have a single program manager out here. Are you all developers? Awesome. Then you won't care about this slide because this is perfectly just for program managers. But in actuality, you do want to care about that bottom one there because that bottom one there from Synopsys shows that this is their 2018 open source security bulletin that just came out. That in IoT, of the applications that they actually checked, mostly open source, 677 vulnerabilities per application. Okay, so think about that number for a second, and this is mostly Node. I mean, for any of you Node developers out there. So security, as we all know, starts at design. If you don't start it at the design time, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because the security people are going to come really nag you. Right? So one of the first things that I try to get developers to sit back and look at is think about it for a second at this software that you're looking at. Right? All of this stuff actually was given to us by developer teams, not necessarily at Intel, but other developer teams that I've worked with elsewhere. And so these are all real, and many of them still exist. This was submitted to us and was found in a code review, right? This is the type of thing that you find. I mean, they actually pulled the open source in from, and this, as many of you can tell probably, this is an Android application that was in there, and they submitted it and said, we want to put this into our product. I said, nope. No, I'm not kidding you, and let me tell you, some of the things that I see, I wish I could unsee. So, these are actual comments. That if you go out there and you open up a GitHub and you see these, and I'm even going to take you there. Oh, I can't do that here. Dang. I can't take you there. These links all take you to these actual comments. Okay? When you look at the one on CJSON where it says, I didn't write this code, but I like it. Right? Or when you see the one on an AES 256 crypto application that tells you this is more, it runs slowly and it's more subject to side channel attacks. And yet they still want to stop and they want to put this into an application. You have to stop and read the README at least. And if you don't read the READMEs, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. Every one of these were right on the front page. When they were given to us and they said, we want to use these, we had to, of course, look at them and say, nope. I always tell the developers to please look for the red flags, right? And there are many red flags. We had one come in a week or two ago, and I mean, this is actually really recent because I just went through and redid this from a 55-minute presentation down to 10 minutes. So I had to find some new stuff for it. This came to us, and it was actually in the comments in the code. Okay? So if you can tell me as a developer that you feel you can write a better parser than the people at Apache, and they still haven't gotten it right after 20 years, okay, more power to you, right? But I assure you, this is not the case, and we constantly have to clean up after our developers. This isn't just limited to C, C++, Node, or Python. We even see it in Perl. Somebody actually tried to submit this and have this put into one of their Perl projects. Well, for those that don't know what this is, when CPAN puts this unauthorized release on there, it means that somebody has submitted a version that was not signed by the key of the original developer. So, when you try to pull that down and use it, are you getting malicious code or what? There's just no way to tell. You don't want to be doing this. Then we have the famous fork of a fork of a fork. And this was one of the most egregious things that I had ever seen, where the top JSON path was submitted, was the repository that was submitted that they wanted to use. This was a fork of another repository. Okay, well, the fork that they were using hadn't been worked on since 2014. The fork that it was forked from had new development brought in and had been developed on, including right up through into 2017. The big problem is they didn't look to see where the original fork came from, which came from a fork written from a book. So who has the real license to this code, right? So it's not just bad code, it's also bad provenance, because if you don't know where the code is actually coming from, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble using some of this code. You also end up with the people who want to submit things from code.google.com. Code.google.com was closed down in 2016. If you're pulling code in from this archive, you're pulling in code that is not actively maintained, it's not being looked at by anybody, and trust me, if there are CVEs against it, which are common vulnerability exploits, right? If there are, nobody's fixing them. Not a good place to get your code from. And then, of course, we all remember this, where we had left pad, where they broke the internet. Well, it can still happen. Only now that the developers have figured out that this can happen, you know, NPM did a pretty good job in the fact that they will take it away and give it to somebody else immediately and put that code back out there. But you can't tell me that malicious writers are not looking at other ways to handle things like this. One of the things that I give our developers when they're new is this little grading sheet. And this little grading sheet, if anybody wants any, I have a few of them that I brought with me just so that you can have a nice little, 4x5 card, so that you can have this little grading sheet to take back with you. And I tell people, if you cannot get at least a C, right, on your grading of your software, which means you're looking at the code, you're looking at GitHub, you're looking at whether or not there are actual developers and more than one person who's doing it on their side work in a garage at night. You're looking at whether it has security vulnerabilities, and you're taking into account, does it have a test plan, does it have real testing going on, and putting that all into context with the project that you're working on. Right? Just because you get a C doesn't mean it's bad. Just because you get an A doesn't mean it's good. It's all in context with the project that you're working on. And you really should work with your security department to figure out, do you think we should use this? But one of the best things that I always love, and as this next slide is the last slide here, and then I can let you all go, right? I realize I've been preaching. I get very preachy, trust me. Nobody knows how much somebody can nag until they've been around me for a while. Always have a good test plan. And this is an actual test plan. Thank you.